Welcome back to this series of tutorials on styling a basic web page. In our previous tutorial, we learned how to implement an image to the background of our page, and we also included a title. In this tutorial, I want to introduce you to a couple of techniques within the background position property of our style sheet that will help us position this image exactly the way we want it. If you think of the left side of the viewport and the top edge of the viewport as zero values, much like that of a number line, everything to the right of that zero would be a whole number, and everything below the top edge would be a whole number. If you needed your image to extend beyond the left or top area of this viewport, then it would be extending towards the negative side of those zero values. Whenever the browser is positioning an image, background image, it doesn't concern itself with the right or the bottom, only the top and the left. So if I needed to move this image more towards the left, whatever amount is extending, whatever amount of the edge of my image extends beyond this left side would be a negative amount. Whenever the browser initially places your image on your background, it sets it right up against the left and the top. That's how it positions it. And in my style sheet, I have my value set at 0. So if I needed to move my image towards the left more, I'm taking the edge of my image and I'm extending it towards the negative value of that left edge. If I wanted to move it 50 more pixels towards the left to adjust it, then I would put negative 50 pixels. That's going to extend my image more to the left. And you can tell, since my image is exactly 1024 by 768, that I have about 50 pixels here of the white background, by default the white background of my page showing. It works the same way. If I needed to move my image more towards the top, there again, we're moving it beyond the 0 value. So let's move it towards the top 50 pixels. Now the edge of my image is actually going to extend 50 pixels beyond the 0, which means negative 50 pixels. So I refresh our browser. So now the edge of my image is extending beyond the 0 towards the negative 50. It works the same way. If you want to move your image more to the right or towards the bottom, then you would use whole numbers. If I wanted to readjust what I've already done, if I wanted to move my image 20 towards the right more, then I would just add 20 whole pixels to this negative 50, which would leave me with a negative 30. And if I wanted to move it more towards the bottom, maybe I moved it too far. Let's say I want to move it back towards the bottom 10 pixels. Then I would just subtract 10 whole pixels from the 50, and it would be a negative 40. So that readjusts my image. If you're using an image that's smaller than your viewport, I'm going to set it back to 0 value. If at 0 value, let's say your image is smaller than the viewport, so you've got the edge of your image showing here with the white background around the outer right and bottom edges of your image, and you want to center your image, then you would need to place whole numbers. So in this case, I'm going to move my image towards the right 100 pixels, and I'm going to move it towards the bottom 100 pixels. So I'm going to use whole numbers. If you remember, this is the horizontal value and this is the vertical. We'll just save that and refresh it in the browser. And so we can tell now there's about 100 pixels between the edge of my photo and the top of the browser and the edges and the left side. If you have an image that's smaller than the viewport and you don't want this background to show up, then you can take your image into Photoshop and do the dropper and use the dropper to get a close match to the color of the background of your image. And in order to implement a color to the background of your page, we've been using background image. The only value you can use in the background image property is actually the location of your image. But in order to place a color, you're going to want to place the color for the background of your page just before the URL of your image. And in this case, I'm going to use black. So I'm going to place my number sign and the hexadecimal code for the color black for the background of my page. And I'm going to save that. Since I've placed another value other than my location, I'm going to place a space just between those two values. And I'm going to erase the dash image and just use the generic property background. This property actually will work for using or implementing more than just one value. For example, if you don't want to type out the background repeat and the background position and the background attachment in your style sheet, you can simply take your values and place them all on one line after the background property, but make sure that you place a space between each value. Looks like I have two spaces there. I do, so I'll just place one. This certainly makes it a lot faster than having to write out all these different properties for the background. And we'll save that and refresh it in our browser. So now we have this black color on the background of our HTML page that goes around our image. And if you've matched the background of your image with a color in Photoshop, then it's going to be whatever color that you set there. If by chance, when your page loads and your image doesn't show up, it's actually a good idea to always include a color for your background page, so that if you have any of your fonts coded with a lighter color or say a darker color, then when your page loads without your image, at least your fonts will show up. So that's pretty much what you can do in order to reposition your image on the background of your HTML page. So I'm going to set this back to 0 value, since my image is a size that fits right in the viewport. This is coming along real nicely, and in the next video tutorial we're going to be working with the title that we implemented in our previous video, and we're going to have time to add some containers so that it has this border here. So thank you for watching this video tutorial. I look forward to seeing you in the next video tutorial.